Welcome back to the Midnight Mystery Archive, and we are continuing with our Amy Bradley series. And one of the most important aspects of the series that we're working on is that we are bringing voices of people who have been a part of Amy's story. And I am fortunate enough today to be joined by one of the key eyewitnesses to Amy after her disappearance, and that is Judy. Judy, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Judy, I want to give you a little bit of context here. One of the
Mhm.
reasons I was most interested in speaking with you is because your story and yours has been mentioned on the Beth Holloway show and on the Netflix show has been consistent across now almost 20 years, which to me makes your sighting extremely credible. And that's why I wanted your voice to be heard on this podcast. So I
Oh,
really
thank you.
appreciate you joining me.
Thank you.
So, can you give me a little bit of context as to what brought you to Barbados for myself and the listeners? What were you there for?
Okay, we were on a cruise, another cruise. We never been on a cruise before. We docked in Bridgetown, Barbados, and I wanted to go shopping for souvenirs for my kids and my grandkids. So we get off the boat and we had to get a taxi to get over to Bridgetown, but it wasn't that far. But anyway, so we walked up. We were going to go souvenir shopping, and so we found a souvenir shop called Del Sol, and we went in there. And I'm an animal lover, and I had cats at the time. Now I have dogs, but we were looking at T-shirts. You know, they have different T-shirts with cats on them. Had the name of Bridgetown, Barbados on. So I'm holding them up, and I'm saying, "Look at this one. It looks just like our cat," and stuff like that. And I noticed that there was a woman that was we were, like, kind of lower than what this ramp was, that was standing on this ramp with these men, and she kept listening to every word that I said. And she says just kept staring at me and listening to everything that I said. And I was saying, "Looky, this one looks just like our cat. Maybe we should get my daughter this one." And I just kept doing things like that. And she just kept staring at me. It was a very, very, very odd thing. And there were three men with her, and then there was one outside, I think. He kept looking in the window. I don't know what he was doing. But then they got up to where they were in line, like, to check out, but they didn't have anything to check out. They asked to use the restroom, and the girl told her no, because they all wanted to go in there together, and it was a small store, and it was probably just a little restroom. So they told them no, so they left. And then we went over and got up on the ramp to check out, and we checked out, and we left. And then I said, "Let's walk down here by the," because behind this store was a wharf, and it had where the boats, like individual people that boat parked. And we go back there and we're just walking along. And then all of a sudden I noticed that those people were behind us. So I don't know where they had gone in between. They were maybe 40 feet behind us, but I could hear them talking. And they were like, and then you could see a cruise boat up ahead in the ocean. I don't know if it was ours or whose it was, but they were looking at the cruise boat and they were making fun of the cruise boat. And they said, "What do you think they're doing in there right now?" And they kept asking Amy stuff like this. And she'd say, "They're either eating or dancing." And then they would laugh, so, which I don't see why that's so funny, but they just kept laughing at whatever she said was going on in the cruise boat. And I don't remember what else she said. They just kept making fun of the cruise boat. So we just started walking faster. And then we get up quite a ways because Del Sol was on the main street where all the shops are. So then we find a side street and we cut through there and went back up on the main street because we went out the back way and come out onto Seoul and went up that wharf. So we're getting some department store, and I don't remember which one it was. It was a bigger department store. And we go in there and it was so hot. We're not used to how hot it is. And my husband says, "I'm really hot." And he says, "Well, let's go back to the boat." And I go, "Well, let me use the restroom first." So I went over to this restroom, and it was like you walk through a big opening, and then on the left is the women's and on the right is the men's. It has a hallway down. So I go down to the women's restroom and I go in there and I sit down on the toilet, and all of a sudden I hear men's voices in the restroom. I was petrified. So I tried to hide and I pulled my feet up, and I noticed somebody kept looking in the crack, and I kept moving, trying to hide from them. I don't know who they were, and I could hear them talking. And then there was another man standing at the other end of he wasn't looking, but he was on the phone and he was talking to someone. I don't know who he was talking to, but he was trying to get a time for some appointment that night. And he goes, "Is 10 o'clock okay?" And I don't remember what all he was saying to this person, but he's saying, "Yeah, we'll be there at 10 and all this, you know." And they were talking, and then all of a sudden he gets off. The men walk out, and he gets off the phone, and he goes, "I'm going out right now." He goes, "The deal's at 10 o'clock, and you better be ready to go." And you better not try to leave because we're going to be outside watching and waiting all night. And she says, okay. And then he says, and then tomorrow we'll make our way back to Curacao. And then she says, can we stop and see the children? She acted like she was happy because they were going back to Curacao. Can we stop and see the children? Now, she didn't say my children. Everybody acts like it was her children. I don't know who they were. She says the children. And she'd be the type of person, I think, that just likes children. I don't know. So, and he goes, no, I'm leaving now. I'm going out now. And she says, there's no one in here. Whether she didn't see me, I'm pretty sure she knew I was in there, but she told him there was no one in there. Okay. So as soon as they all left, I thought, I'm getting out of here. I was petrified. I could tell that something was going on that she wasn't going to be happy about because they kept saying, you better not try to leave. So I pull my pants up and I go open the door and she's standing up by the sink. And I could see her in the mirror and she was crying. And I have 4 kids and I had a 2-year-old and then 2 years later I had triplets. They were she was just about their age. I couldn't leave. So I was just going to leave. I wasn't going to even wash my hands. That's how scared I was. So I walk over to the sink and I started to wash my hands. And I go, and she went into the corner like this and wouldn't talk to me. And I go, and I could tell when she was talking that she had a Southern accent. So I said, I'm thinking, what's this Southern girl doing here? So I asked her, I says, do you live here? And she went, no. She didn't say no. She just shook her head. And I go, are you on a cruise? And she went, and I'm still thinking, what's this girl doing here? She's from America and has a Southern accent if she's not on a cruise and she doesn't live there. So I said, well, what's your name? Now, I asked her where she was from. And I thought at the time she said West Virginia. And I live in Ohio. So I says, I told Iva that. And she says that she probably was saying Chesterfield, Virginia. And I just heard the chest because I was so scared. So then I said, up until that point, she hadn't talked. She just shook her head. I go, well, what's your name? And I didn't think she was going to answer me. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you this. She looked to the side like she was going back in time, thinking, and like had the saddest look on her face I've ever seen anyone have. And then it just came out real softly, Amy. That's all she said. Well, she didn't say her last name. She just said, Amy. Well, I could dummy. I didn't know the guy was standing at the door. My voice got louder and I go, oh, I have a daughter named Amy just about your age. And I live near where you're from. I'm from Ohio. She did a pivot, like, you do in a basketball, and starts walking towards me. And I start backing up. She backed me into the wall, like she was trying to get me to shut up. And the guy banged on the door, and the door kept coming open about this far because it was one of those swing doors. I was petrified. She backed me up into the wall and then just stood real close to me like this and then didn't move.
I think that's a really important thing to mention. There's a couple of things here. First and foremost, every time you have been shown on a documentary or a show, the early portion, the fact that you had seen her earlier in the day has never been revealed. So
They leave a lot
this
out.
yeah, this is new information for a lot of listeners, is that this wasn't your first encounter with her.
Yeah,
But
but
in
I
it
didn't talk to her before. Yeah.
Correct. So the other really interesting part is how she responded when you raised your voice. I think that's important, right? Because you had also mentioned that she had said there was nobody else in there. So,
Yes.
so to your point, she was probably reacting to the heightened pitch of your voice
Mhm.
that the people inside or outside may have heard.
And she probably knew they were out there, but I didn't know that.
And it was
Well,
probably risky for her and for you.
yeah. So when he started pounding on the door and making a noise like a siren, like hurry up. That's what he did. And it come open about this far when he kept pounding on it and I could see his face. I must have had a horrible look on. I was petrified. She had backed me into the wall. I didn't know what to do. So when I get scared, I start talking a mile a minute. So I start saying, well, it's so nice meeting you. I'm going to go now. I'm on a cruise. I just started talking a mile a minute. And it was all I could, and you're gonna think I'm crazy when I say this. My mother's passed away. I felt like I could hear my mother screaming, "Get out, get out, get out." I did it. I could hear that in my brain. Get out, get out. So I walk over to the door and I opened the door, and this man standing in the door and won't let me out. Okay. And I put my back up against the door that was open and kept trying to inch out real slowly. And he kept trying to intimidate me. And he kept, I don't know if you want to put this on there or not, but he looked at my breasts and back up to my face, just kept trying to do that, like intimidate me. I didn't think it took me 15 minutes to get out of there. It was like a cat and mouse game. Finally, he let me slide by. Finally. And then I had to walk down a hallway to get to the opening in the department store. So I get to this and I looking for my husband and he's up by the door waving at me. And there's a man on my left about 10 feet, man on my right and 10 feet, and a man straight ahead about 20 feet. They were like in a horseshoe around the opening. I was all I could do to walk because I know those were the three men that were in there with him to walk between the two to get to my husband. But I did it. And so I walked to him and he's all upset. What took you so long? You know, he's going on and on and on. So I get up to him and I turn around and I'm starting to tell him the story. He goes, "Oh, Judy, that was a prostitute. There's nothing you can do." That's what he said to me. Because that's what it appears, you know, like. They finally come out, and the guy that was in the restroom with her had his arm through her arm. I mean, you know, like, you know what I'm talking about? Didn't have a hold of her hand. It was through her arm, so she couldn't get away. And one man, I get upset when I talk about one man went over there and did that same thing on her other arm. One man got in front of her and one man got behind her, and they walked as a unit to the back door and went through the back door.
So, one of the interesting things you mentioned is kind of your husband's reaction, right?
Yeah, and he doesn't remember much about it.
Yeah, so but I think
He
it's
just knows
really
I was in there a long time, this
right, yeah,
man.
in there too too long, right? But I think his reaction is interesting because one of the things that people don't understand is we're talking, what year was this? This was
2005.
2005. Okay. So we're talking 2005. In the world of 2005, his reaction makes perfect sense
Mhm.
because the idea of forced sexual trafficking was very foreign at the time. I think a lot of people reflect back to eyewitnesses from 98 and 2005. For instance, I spoke to Lori, who was on the ship and was the last one to see them on the ship that morning. And she told me that people would say to me before I got off social media, "Well, why didn't you take a picture?" Because it was 1998, we didn't have
Mhm.
phones in our
Mhm.
pocket. Well, the idea of trafficking was not a widely known thing in the world of 2005. So his reaction makes perfect sense because I think a lot of times what people will do is they will look at your husband's reaction and say, "Oh my gosh, just a typical man. I can't believe he would say that." He was responding as a normal person would have in
Right, right,
2005.
right. He had no clue, and I telling him what happened while I'm standing there, and I turn around and people were listening to me, and there was a black guy that I think was their lookout that was listening to me, and then not that it mattered that he black, I'm just saying he was listening, that's I'm just describing him. And then there's this other woman there that could speak good English, and I asked her where the police station was, and she goes, "It's down the street, but if I was you, I wouldn't go there." I go, "Why?" She goes, "Because they're on the take. They take money from these criminals, and they're not gonna do anything, and they'll apprehend you, and you won't make it back to your ship." That's what she said to me, and she was real nice about it, she wasn't being mean.
Yeah, she was just telling you, "Hey, this is the way that it is."
She says, "Your best bet is to go back to the United States and call the FBI." That's what she said. So, I was so upset. And so my husband doesn't remember. He didn't see much of it. So all he saw was them come out. And he kept telling me it was probably a prostitute, not to worry. But I didn't think so by the way she acted. I mean,
It's it seemed like she was being forced to do whatever she was doing, right?
oh, yeah, definitely, because they kept saying, "You better not try to lead," and the one that was on the phone, he had an accent, sorta like a New England accent, you know what I mean? They didn't sound like foreign to pronounce curacao a little different than what we do. At least
So
he did.
so that's a really interesting point, is that the assumption would be, hearing your story, that these would have been locals. but you're actually sharing
I
that
think they were
one
from the
of the
United
men
States.
might have been
That's just
from the
my
United
opinion.
States. Yeah, we don't know that, but based on what you heard and how they spoke, that was what you took away from it. That's a really interesting bit of information.
Yeah, I didn't think they were from another country, but they I think they're people that go back and forth. Yeah, I think that I mean, there might have been 1 or 2 of them that was from there, but there were a couple of them that yeah, that it was just and then they went out this back door, and I thought it was Cove Shepherd I was in, but Ivor walked me through with some lady that lives in, Barbados, and it's not wasn't Cove Shepherd, it was the other one that they tore down that because that one, Cove Shepherd doesn't have a back door.
Gotcha.
And I didn't even know where I was at the time. So I went back to the ship, and so we get back and we're eating, and I'm all upset. And you know how you have the same waiter at a cruise boat, and I'm telling him, and he wanted to get the captain, and me to tell him, but I didn't get to meet the captain. But he was real nice. He was upset about it when I told him about it. But and then from then on, I never went on a excursion unless I was with other couples. We didn't go by ourselves. I says, "I am not going on another excursion unless I have somebody else with me."
Well,
You know,
I can imagine you have an experience like that. I mean, that is
and I'll never go on another cruise probably too.
yeah.
And then my daughter
I've
gets mad
sworn
at me.
myself off from cruises.
She goes on cruises and I'm thinking, "Oh, I try to tell her not to do it." But
Yeah,
she
I
won't
mean, just
listen.
the height of safety, that's the thing. Be as safe and as
And
responsible
the
as you can
FBI
be.
told me once you're out of the United States, there's nothing they can do, pretty much. They told me that when I called them. And I talked to I don't know how many of them. And he said, once you leave the United States, we can't do much. I mean,
So, when you have this experience, you don't know anything about Amy's story.
no,
So
I'd never even heard of her.
yeah, so can you explain kind of the aha moment that you had that made you realize, "Holy smokes, this was not just some random uncomfortable encounter,
I
this was
really
something
believe that it
big."
was somebody being forced to be a prostitute or do something. I even thought it after I went and saw some movie about how they prostitute little kids, that maybe it was a kid exchange. Do you know what I'm saying? That's why she was talking about children. That's what I thought. I didn't think it was her children. I thought it was maybe they were, using children. You know how awful it is they do that nowadays. I even thought that at one point. But what is it you asked me again?
So, when was it what was the experience that you had that made you realize that, "Oh my gosh, the encounter I had was actually this missing girl?"
Okay, I really tried to put it out of my mind, but it kinda haunted me all the time, but I didn't know who she was or what to do about it, and I finally went into work one day. I worked for Abbott Labs, and the girl that sat next to me says, "Did you see the Dr. Phil show?" And I go, "No, because I work during the day," you know? She says, "Well, get on the internet and look at it." So here I'm at work looking at Dr. Phil, and they had Natalie Holloway's mother on there. And then right after they were on, there was Ivan and Ron, but I didn't know who they were. When they showed the picture of Jazz that they found, I about died because that's exactly what she looked like. Exactly like Jazz. And it just drives me nuts. I had to quit reading Facebook and all that stuff because the things people say that, oh, that's not her. That wasn't her. It was her. That's what she looked like, the girl that I saw. She looked exactly like that.
Well, and it's important too because even the FBI has done some facial recognition and
Right.
say they feel like, there's a very good chance that that's her. So
Yeah.
the idea that people are chirping online saying, "Oh, that's not her," or making other accusations that are completely out of left field is just it's one of the worst things about doing a podcast like this is having to
Mhm.
sift through the stupidity that's out
Well,
there.
that's why I quit reading all that stuff. That's why I just started watching your podcast. I watched the first one and half the second one because and then they would say bad things about me. Like my son, I have 3 kids that are 49 and one that's 51. My son, he's one of the triplets. He's the only one. There's 2 girls and a boy, they're triplets. So he was reading it and they were saying nasty things about me. And they said, how they get on those boards and say things that woman's an idiot. She's not even old enough to have a daughter the same age as Amy Bradley. And my son finally got mad. He goes, "What do you mean? She's 74 and we're And she's my mother and I'm 49. Can you believe that? That people say things like that?
It's amazing. I've likened it to a cesspool. That's really what it is, and it's just a small segment of people. It's all the crazies that
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that sit in their little corner of the internet. They're
And
loud
all saying
and they're
that she fell off
obnoxious.
the boat. There ain't no way she fell off the boat.
It's funny you say that. I had a comment on one of my YouTubes today that was basically she fell off the boat, and I said, "Explain to me how you fall over a railing that's up to your neck. Please
Yeah,
explain the physics of that to me."
and I'm kooky, and, I didn't see her, and they said all kinds of things about me that I'm you know, e they believed the men, but they didn't believe me. Maybe it's because 'cause I'm a woman, I don't know, but as I say, when I do those interviews, they cut more than half of it out that I tell them,
Well, that
and
won't
I don't know
happen today.
why. I mean,
That won't happen today, I can assure
like,
you.
that thing about me being stuck in there and with the men, I mean, they don't know that there was 4 men in there with me, and they don't know that I hid and that then when I went out, I had to walk between those men to get to my husband. I was never so scared in my life.
I can't imagine it, but what you're describing, it's not hard to see why you would be.
And then when I got to my husband, it's like the locals and everybody was, like, standing around listening when I was telling him what happened, and that's when that woman said to me, "Don't go to the police, you'll be sorry." So, I heard that that happens in those foreign countries, that they're on the
Yeah,
take.
yeah, and, it's one of those things that makes it really hard because one of the things I've covered in the podcast is just how many different people and ways Amy was failed, and I think that's a lesser talked about way in which Amy was failed, is that
Well, I tried.
there doesn't seem to be law enforcement at any
Yeah,
level, anywhere that has taken it seriously.
called the FBI finally when I saw her on that Dr. Phil show. I finally called the FBI and I got different reactions from different agents. It depended on who I got. Even one said, well, she fell off the boat. And then a couple other 'em believed me and acted. And they say there's not much they can do. I don't know what they can or can't do, but it's really
It
sad that,
it
we can't
is.
do anything. And I have no idea where she's at. But I think since this has all come out, who knows where they've taken her now?
That's my fear too, but at the end of the day, I think it's important that people like yourself, Lori, David Carmichael continue so I think it's really important that you all are continuing to be willing to share the experience that
Well,
you
I
had.
think Amy was trying to protect me.
I
That's why she walked towards me and backed me up in the corner, like, "Be quiet."
so
And
I
and
I
and
agree with
I
that,
and then
and what's interesting, Judy, I just wanna get this in, is the more people that I talk to that were friends and family, that is the type of person she is.
I goofed it up for her by getting loud, and then they heard me, and I feel guilty that way, but I didn't know that he was standing at the door. I had no clue that he'd be standing at the door and listening. What man would do that? Very strange. I mean, the whole thing was strange and
What you've shared tonight has added additional layers of context to what
mhm.
you experienced, and it's your opportunity to share everything that you experienced. So, Judy, I really appreciate you sitting down, having this
I hope I didn't too
conversation
many
with me.
ahs and
Don't
and
worry about it. If you have information about Amy Bradley's disappearance, please contact the FBI at 1-800 call FBI or submit a tip at tips.fbi.gov. Tips can be submitted anonymously. The FBI reward is now $100,000. For more on Amy and the family's ongoing search, visit amybradleyismissing.com. There, you can also submit tips as well, and I encourage you to do it. Links to that site, as well as the Amy Alerts petition, are in the show notes. During the full run of this series, 100% of commissions through our Invisaware Personal Safety Partnership go directly to the Bradley family's GoFundMe. Get 10% off your first order using the link invisaware.com/Midnight Mystery Archive, also linked in the show notes, and support the show at no extra cost too by shopping through our Amazon link, also in the show notes and linked on our website homepage. Follow the Midnight Mystery Archive on Substack, X, or join our official Facebook group for updates. Another thing you can do that I would really appreciate is a rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, which goes a long way in helping us grow our audience, bring new ears to Amy's case.